The morning sun had just begun to stretch over the horizon when a quiet tremor rippled through the global finance world, not from Wall Street or the London Exchange, but from a tiny message posted on an obscure online investment forum. It was barely 3 sentences long. Asterisk CBI confirms rate activation, Chase verifies live exchange. Asterisk at first glance, it looked like the hundreds of hopeful posts that flooded those message boards every week. For years, thousands of dreamers, investors, and skeptics had followed the Iraqi Dinar and Vietnamese Dong revaluation story, chasing the promise of a once-in-a-lifetime financial reset. But something about this post felt different. Within minutes, users began replying, questioning the source, demanding proof. And then one user dropped a screenshot, a Chase Bank internal memo showing live currency rates ICT at $5.03 and VND at $3.95. At first, no one believed it. The community had seen countless fabrications over the years, doctored images, falsified memos, even voice recordings that later proved fake. But this time, the screenshot looked legitimate. The timestamp matched the current hour. The formatting mirrored Chase Bank's internal style. Within 10 minutes, the image had spread across Telegram channels, Facebook groups, and X, formerly Twitter. "It's happening," one comment read. CBI finally pulled the trigger. The post began gaining traction outside the usual currency forums. Influencers who had covered financial predictions started tweeting, cautiously referencing a potential live rate leak from CBI and Chase Bank. News blogs picked it up within the hour, most labeling it unverified but explosive. Yet the energy online was undeniable. Live streams began popping up, their hosts frantically sharing screenshots, reading posts, and refreshing CBI official website. Investors who had given up years ago suddenly reappeared, their old wallets dusted off, their hands trembling as they logged into their bank accounts, hoping to see anything that confirmed what they'd been waiting for since the early 2010s. At 9:02 a.m. Baghdad time, a ripple turned into a shockwave. The Central Bank of Iraq's website briefly went offline, then came back up with a single, quiet update on its home page. It wasn't flashy or dramatic, just a small banner in Arabic and English. Asterisk, revised international currency rates effective immediately. Asterisk, the page didn't list numbers, but within seconds. Screenshots of the full rate table began circulating. The Iraqi dinar, once sitting at fractions of a U.S. cent, was now listed at $5.03. The Vietnamese dong, long undervalued, showed $3.95. Phones started ringing. At Chase Bank branches across the U.S., confused tellers received a flood of calls. "Is the dinar really live? Can I exchange now? What's the rate?" Managers scrambled to respond, most unsure themselves. In Houston, one branch reported over 200 calls in under an hour. Some banks locked their lobby doors, claiming technical issues, while staff checked internal systems. The rumor spread faster than they could contain it. By mid-morning, social media had turned into a frenzy. Hashtags like #DinarLive, #Chase confirmed, and #GlobalReset trended worldwide. YouTubers went live, their titles screaming breaking news, CBI confirms Dinar RV. The view counts surged in real time, tens of thousands tuning in to hear speculation, analysis, and in many cases, sheer disbelief. Screenshots of bank rate terminals circulated on Reddit and X, each one more convincing than the last. Meanwhile, inside CBI headquarters in Baghdad, chaos was controlled but palpable. Reports suggested that the bank had been preparing this move quietly for months under extreme secrecy. Only a handful of senior officials were aware of the exact launch time. Sources claimed even international partners were caught off guard. Yet the tone inside was one of confidence. This was not a glitch, not a leak, but a deliberate unveiling of Iraq's return to global financial strength. In the U.S., Chase Bank's Manhattan headquarters was in emergency mode. Senior executives gathered in conference rooms, staring at live currency feeds that confirmed what the internet had already discovered. The numbers weren't wrong, the rates were indeed active. Legal teams rushed to draft statements, while PR representatives coordinated with federal regulators for approval. But before any official response could be released, a short video clip from a Chase employee leaked on TikTok, a teller showing the updated screen, whispering, "It's real." The clip went viral in under 5 minutes, amassing millions of views and setting the internet ablaze. Financial journalists began calling this the digital gold rush. Every hour, new stories emerged of small investors checking their portfolios and realizing they were suddenly worth millions. A retired schoolteacher in Arizona who'd invested $8,000 in Dinar back in 2011 posted a photo of her Chase app showing a balance exceeding $4 million. People didn't know whether to believe her, but screenshots, photos, and live videos kept pouring in from around the world, showing similar results. By noon, the world's major financial news outlets could no longer ignore the story. Bloomberg, CNBC, and Reuters all issued alerts confirming that both the Central Bank of Iraq and Chase Bank had acknowledged currency rate adjustments. Global markets hesitated. Analysts scrambled to interpret the impact. Was this the long, rumored revaluation or a digital malfunction on a massive scale? Currency traders began flooding Forex platforms. The Iraqi dinar and Vietnamese dong pairings exploded with volume, overwhelming several trading systems. Governments quietly contacted their banking partners, seeking clarification. A sense of surreal awe filled the air for decades. The dinar revaluation had been a myth, whispered about in small investor circles, mocked by economists, and dismissed by mainstream media. Now it was playing out live before everyone's eyes. Families gathered around TV like it was a moon landing. In homes across the U.S., Iraq, Vietnam, and beyond, people watched news anchors struggle to keep up with the pace of events. Rumors spread that other banks, Wells Fargo, HSBC, and Citi, were preparing similar confirmations. Online, disbelief began to turn into cautious celebration. "It's finally happening," one investor wrote. "After all these years, it's real." And amid all the chaos, a quiet realization settled in across millions of screens. The world had just witnessed one of the most dramatic financial events in modern history unfold not from a press conference or government decree, but from a single anonymous forum post that ignited a global wildfire of truth. The CBI and Chase Bank had not only confirmed the revaluation, they had changed the way the world would forever view digital information, trust, and the thin line between rumor and revolution. The streets of Baghdad buzzed with a strange electricity that morning. Word had spread like wildfire that the Central Bank of Iraq had officially changed the exchange rate of the Iraqi dinar. At first, people hesitated to believe it. After all, rumors of revaluation had circulated for years, always ending in disappointment. But this time, something was different. Television networks broke into regular programming, flashing breaking news banners across the screen. The anchor's voice trembled slightly as he read the statement that had been released by the CBI. Asterisk effective immediately, the Iraqi dinar has been adjusted to reflect its true value in the international market. Asterisk crowds began forming outside banks across the city. People carried bundles of old notes, some worn and creased from years of being hidden in drawers and boxes. There were veterans who had held onto the currency as a symbol of their country's hope, merchants who had quietly invested every spare dinar, and ordinary citizens who just wanted to know if it was real. Bank tellers could barely keep up. The exchange boards inside local branches flickered and refreshed, and then it appeared in bold numbers. Asterisk asterisk 1 ICT equals 5.03 USD. Asterisk asterisk gasps filled the room. Strangers hugged. Some people cried. For many Iraqis, it was more than money. It was proof that their country had finally risen from decades of instability. At the same time, across the ocean in New York City, the mood inside Chase Bank's Manhattan headquarters was one of controlled chaos. On the 47th floor, the conference room was filled with executives, lawyers, and IT specialists staring at live data feeds. The numbers were flashing in real time: Iraqi dinar $5.03, Vietnamese dong $3.95. The confirmation had been received through official banking channels, and the rates were now active across the global exchange network. "It's live," one analyst whispered, his voice almost inaudible over the hum of tension in the room. The CEO leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Then we need a statement before this spins out of control. Outside, news vans began parking along Park Avenue as rumors leaked that Chase had verified the rates. Journalists scrambled for quotes. Security guards tried to keep order as a small crowd formed outside, some holding phones, others waving printed screenshots from online banking apps. Inside, employees were fielding nonstop calls from customers demanding answers. Is it true? Can I exchange now? Are you buying at that rate? The phones rang so loudly that one manager simply unplugged the landline. Across the United States, stories began pouring in. In Houston, a woman named Angela Torres was sitting in her car when her banking app refreshed. For years, she had been mocked by friends for holding on to her small stack of Iraqi dinar. Her husband had called it a lost cause, but now, staring at her screen, she couldn't breathe. The numbers had changed. Her modest $12,000 investment was now worth over $6 million. She dropped her phone, covered her face, and started crying. By the time she drove to her local Chase branch, she wasn't alone. A line had already formed, people holding currency envelopes, some crying, some laughing, all asking the same thing. Is this real? In Vietnam, the atmosphere was no less electric. The revaluation of the dong caught the nation by surprise. Government officials made brief televised appearances assuring citizens that the move was part of a larger global adjustment, a realignment of economic truth. On the streets of Ho Chi Minh City, currency exchange offices were overrun with people. Some just wanted to see the rates for themselves. The once dismissed banknotes were suddenly treasures, pieces of paper that could change lives overnight. Meanwhile, on social media, disbelief turned into frenzy. Live streams from Iraq, the U.S., and even Europe showed people checking rates live on screens. It's real, it's happening right now. One streamer shouted to thousands of viewers, holding up her phone to display the Chase currency converter showing ICT 503 USD. The video spread like wildfire. Within hours, tens of millions had seen it. Financial influencers rushed to comment, some congratulating early investors, others warning of a temporary spike. That might reverse, but those warnings were drowned out by the collective roar of joy from people who had waited for this moment for over a decade. At the CBI headquarters, security was tightened as crowds grew outside. The governor of the central bank, dressed in a dark suit, addressed a swarm of cameras. His voice was steady but emotional. Asterisk, this revaluation marks a new chapter in Iraq's economic future. We have restored value to our nation's currency and confidence to our people. Asterisk, his words echoed through every news outlet in the country. People cheered. In homes and cafes, Iraqis watched with tears in their eyes, proud to see their country's economy finally recognized on a global scale. Back in New York, the atmosphere had shifted from panic to awe. Chase's communication team finally released an official statement to the press. Asterisk, as part of a coordinated international currency update, Chase Bank systems have confirmed activation of new exchange rates for the Iraqi dinar ICT and Vietnamese dong VND. All rates are verified and live. Asterisk, the statement spread across the globe in minutes. Financial markets wobbled, gold prices rose, oil prices fluctuated wildly as analysts tried to predict the next move. Every trader, banker, and economist was glued to their screens. The question on everyone's mind was the same, asterisk, what happens now? Asterisk, by evening, news anchors around the world were reporting it as the Great Revaluation. Interviews flooded the airwaves, economists debating the implications, everyday people sharing life-changing stories, and skeptics reluctantly admitting the truth. One interview stood out. A middle-aged man from London who had quietly held on to his dinar since serving as a contractor in Iraq in 2004. He smiled through tears as he held up a plastic bag filled with old notes. They said I was crazy, he said. Now I can pay off my mortgage, help my family, and finally retire. The ripple effects were immediate. Forex platforms saw record-breaking volumes. banks around the world began issuing temporary exchange limits to control the sudden rush. Governments held emergency meetings to assess the economic aftershocks. Yet amid the chaos, there was an undeniable sense of wonder. For millions of people, this wasn't just about numbers. It was about validation, perseverance, and faith rewarded. In Baghdad, the city lights glowed brighter than usual that night. Families gathered on rooftops, talking excitedly about the future. For the first time in a long while, hope felt tangible. Across the world, in the glass towers of Chase Bank and the crowded streets of Vietnam, people were experiencing the same extraordinary truth. A simple currency revaluation had just united the globe in shock, disbelief, and possibility. The impossible had happened. The rates were live, the statements confirmed, and the world was watching history unfold, a moment that would be talked about for generations as the day the dinar and dong changed everything. By the time the sun set across the globe, the entire world was caught in a surreal state of disbelief. News networks had abandoned their usual programming and were broadcasting live coverage of what had quickly been dubbed asterisk, the global currency reset, asterisk every major financial hub, from New York to London, Dubai to Singapore was buzzing with confusion, excitement, and chaos. Outside Chase Bank branches across the United States, lines formed that stretched down sidewalks and around corners. Some people clutched crisp envelopes filled with old Iraqi dinar notes. Others held onto stacks of Vietnamese dong they'd kept for years. Everyone wanted confirmation. Everyone wanted proof that the numbers flooding their screens were real. Inside the banks, tellers and managers were exhausted. Some had worked all day without a break, answering the same questions over and over again. Is it true? Are you exchanging? How long will the rate stay? Many had no official guidance beyond the internal memo confirming that the new rates were indeed active. Some banks had even shut their doors, citing system maintenance, as they tried to manage the overwhelming flood of inquiries. Yet the more they tried to contain the situation, the more it spread. Videos surfaced of customers showing their receipts, proof that they had exchanged their currency at the new, unbelievable rates. Each new clip only fueled the hysteria. In the quiet halls of government buildings, officials from the U.S. Treasury, the IMF, and the World Bank were holding emergency meetings. Overnight, the financial balance of the world had shifted. Nations that had been considered developing economies suddenly held currencies valued at levels comparable to the strongest in the world. Economists debated whether this was sustainable, whether it was a strategic recalibration, or if the world had just entered an unprecedented economic experiment. But outside those closed doors, ordinary people were too caught up in their own emotions to care about macroeconomics. For people who had been waiting decades, it was vindication. Across social media, posts poured in from small investors celebrating their sudden wealth. One man in Florida recorded himself holding a dinar note, tears in his eyes as he whispered, "They said we were fools, but look at us now." His video went viral overnight, amassing millions of views and turning him into an instant symbol of the new financial awakening. Others began sharing stories of how they planned to use their windfall, paying off debts, buying homes, donating to charities, and helping struggling family members. It wasn't just about money, it was about restoration, about hope returning after years of doubt and ridicule. In Iraq, the streets of Baghdad were alive with celebration. Fireworks burst into the night sky as people cheered and sang. The revaluation had not just transformed bank accounts, it had revived national pride. For years, Iraq's economy had been shackled by war, sanctions, and corruption. Now, with the dinar trading above $5 dollars, Iraqis felt the weight of history lift. "We are back," one shopkeeper shouted as he waved a flag from his storefront. "The world sees us again." Television networks captured scenes of joy and disbelief. Elderly citizens wept as they exchanged old notes for dollars worth thousands. Young Iraqis who had grown up knowing only economic struggle suddenly envisioned futures filled with opportunity. Businesses stayed open late into the night, restaurants offering free meals to customers celebrating the news. It was more than a financial event. It was a cultural rebirth. Meanwhile, in Vietnam, a similar energy pulsed through the cities. Crowds formed around banks, while the government maintained a composed but proud stance. Officials assured citizens that this adjustment reflected Vietnam's growing influence in global trade and finance. For the Vietnamese people, long accustomed to modest living, the surge in value was overwhelming. Families who had saved dong for years suddenly found themselves with more than they could comprehend. The local news stations interviewed tearful elders who said they could now send their grandchildren abroad for education, something that had always seemed impossible. In the U.S. and Europe, investors who had been ridiculed for years became overnight legends. Financial advisors who once dismissed the dinar and dong as fantasy currencies were now being asked to explain how they had missed the biggest financial event of the century. Online, forums that once debated hypotheticals were now flooded with real data, screenshots, and testimonies. The revaluation is real. One viral post read, and the world will never be the same again. But amid the euphoria, there was confusion too. Currency markets struggled to stabilize. Oil prices fluctuated as investors scrambled to assess the implications for Iraq's exports. Gold prices soared as people looked for security amid the uncertainty. Governments released statements urging calm, reminding citizens that while the changes were legitimate, there would be adjustments and transitional phases to ensure stability. Still, the excitement was unstoppable. News anchors tried to capture the magnitude of what had happened, calling it the largest wealth transfer in modern history. Economists compared it to the post-World War Roman II economic restructuring, but faster, more chaotic, and driven not by policy or war, but by digital information and mass belief. In a way, it felt poetic, that after decades of skepticism, the revaluation that had been dismissed as conspiracy had been made real in an era of instant connectivity. Late into the night, Chase Bank finally released a second official statement to calm the storm. It read, "A Chase Bank acknowledges the live implementation of revised currency rates for the Iraqi dinar and Vietnamese dong. Our systems are stable, and we are working closely with international partners to ensure a smooth transition for all customers." The statement confirmed what millions already knew. The revaluation wasn't temporary. It was here to stay. As the world absorbed this reality, human stories began to surface, each more unbelievable than the last. A retired veteran who had purchased dinar while deployed in Iraq found himself a multimillionaire overnight. A single mother who had bought dong years ago as a speculative investment was now debt-free. Entire online communities that had been mocked as currency dreamers suddenly stood vindicated, their patience rewarded beyond measure. But even as joy spread, there was a quiet sense of awe. People understood that they were living through something historic, something that defied explanation. It wasn't just about rates or banks. It was about faith, timing, and the mysterious forces that shape the world. In coffee shops, churches, mosques, and homes, people spoke the same words, "We never thought we'd see this day." By the next morning, analysts predicted that global markets would spend months adjusting to the new reality. Currencies would rebalance, trade deals would be rewritten, and entire economies would be redefined. Yet, for the millions of ordinary people who had woken up to a new life, those details didn't matter. All they knew was that everything had changed. In a single day, history had pivoted. The dinar and the dong, once symbols of forgotten economies, had become the catalysts for the greatest financial awakening of the century. The revaluation had not only changed bank accounts, it had rewritten destinies, rekindled national pride, and reminded the world that sometimes the impossible doesn't just happen. It happens all at once.